So in relation to why we've brought ISO 45003 to the table is often in a lot of conversations, not many people know what it's about. And this is often the question that we are trying to understand is how many people identify with it, know what it's all about, and how can they learn from it. So I'm going to hand over to Peter Kelly. So first of all, for many of you who don't know him, I think he's senior psychologist. He works with the Health and Safety Executive. He's also a practice chair of the EAOHP. He's also on the Inside Out Leaders Board 2020 for mental health. And all around, I really love chatting to Peter because he's really down to earth. I think he, lives his values in everything that he does. And I think he does a much better job of skateboarding than I will ever do. So over to you, Peter.
I'm just saying there's my skateboard. So living the health and well-being dream. But let's take us back to the beach. Okay, excellent. Nice to. So can you all hear me? And just big thumbs up. That'd be excellent. Cool. So I've got 8 minutes, which is great because I have to be succinct, which is quite a rarity for me. But ISO 45003 was launched on June the 8th. Here it is. Not very good if you have a really bad background. So that's 45,003 in nice colors and black and white. About 3 years of my life of trying to support people and understand a national standard for managing psychological health, safety and well-being. Hands up if you think it's an issue in the current workforce. Thank you very much. That's very good. Effectively, 45,003 is an attempt to align all of the management systems that we've got for psychological health. It incorporates the Canadian standards, the Australian standards, Total Worker Health, which is from America, South American standards, and obviously the UK standards and the European standards, so there are a number of different bodies that have done different works. What we're trying to do with our ISO 45003 was to basically centralize that experience now. So ISO 45003, it's about psychological health and safety. Why is it important? Well, coronavirus is here, okay? It was important before, but it's hugely important right now because there are 3 parallel pandemics happening at the moment. There is a global recession, a global influenza pandemic, and there is a global movement of mental ill health as a consequence of the previous 2 situations that we find. This is from Wuhan, this is in China, and this was actually done within the first few weeks of the first wave. Take a note of what they're all doing with each other. They're supporting each other. Psychological health and safety is about connection and support and about traveling this journey with people. And I think it's a beautiful image done from on an intensive care ward in Wuhan, only a short few weeks after the actual onset of the first wave. What we really want is a normal life, don't we? We want to go back to a normal life, a normality, and that will be very different. And one of the advantage of having this standard here is it gives you the principles on which you can put structures and systems around that allow you to manage people back into work after exactly something like the global pandemic that we're seeing at the moment. And I think it's an important, we look at the principles in 45,003 and apply those. But effectively, what we were seeing at the start of the pandemic was, if you look at the left dotted line, that's people's the rise of depression and anxiety starting. Do you see that actually it's very slow in the initial wave, then people adapt, and then as you're coming out, there's a very sharp rise in people's mental distress, and we see this consistently now. So that's why we're confident that there is this mental health, an emerging mental health crisis coming along. So, and that's based on work with special forces who go into conflict zones, and it's how we prepare for conflicts. What we really created is we've asked people to socially distance, and what we've created is social disconnect, and the social disconnection is a key fundamental issue. Kids in their formative years at 14 and will be going into work in 5 years and will have had potentially 2 years of disruptive education in isolation. We are building on a potential mental health problem that will take us forward. What the national standard's done is it brings them all together and says there are 8 principles which you can follow in here, which take you through those approaches that give you a structure and give you a system, and it can be applied to both large and small organizations. And this, I said mid 2021, so it was actually June. But I think let's get down to the heart of the matter. Okay, we are in the midst of an extremely difficult period of this generation. What happens now will generationally impact the people that are behind us and the people ahead of us. And we have to invest in people's mental health. I am so tired of being told it's too hard. I don't care how hard it is. Asbestos was hard. We tackled it. Welding fuse was hard. We tackled it. So it is hard, absolutely, but it's the seminal occupational health hazard and illness of its generation. We have 17.8 million people off with depression, anxiety, and stress. 1 week into the pandemic, 828,000 people taking leave, 17.8 million days, and somebody says we haven't got a problem. We have a problem. And you know that famous line, Houston, and we have a problem. We had a problem before. We have now got a really big problem. And that's why this standard is so important, because if people say, I can't do it, and I'll say, well, you can do it. Follow the principles of the management standards, follow the principles of what's in this 45,003, and you're going to be halfway there. Because I'm telling you, regulators will come in and ask you, what are you doing? And if you can't show what you're going to do, if you simply say, well, it's too hard, that is not an excuse not to do stuff on health and safety. And I might seem really harsh because I've been really passive and, let's give everyone a hug for the last 15 years, but I haven't, as you know me. I'm passionate about this. But if ever there is a time to do something on mental health, it's now. And it's not for the people in work now. It's for the people that are leading. It's for the kids that are coming through. The 14-year-old kids you see out there that are suffering because of isolation and loneliness are coming into the workplace. We have to make work a place that incubates health, not ill health, that promotes people's positive mental health. And if we can do that, then we will not have failed this generation. And that is how serious it is. If we don't get this right, we fail this generation. The pandemic will disappear. The recession will disappear, but the mental illness, potential mental ill health will carry on growing unless we do something to intervene. You know, in the big storm when George Clooney's driving that boat up that great big tidal wave, George Clooney and that boat, they're the two. That's the pandemic. The wave, that's the mental health issues that potentially are coming our way. And I'm sure people say, oh, well, it's not like that. It's all about emotional. It's all about being resilient and mindful. Absolutely rubbish. Did mindfulness and resilience help you out in the pandemic? No. Do you know what helped you out? Connection with people, right? Naz?
No, just a quick question. I think that just came through is, I think in terms of the ISO 45003, is that the resources that are available. Could you recommend any resources that are available? I know you mentioned one over there, so perhaps we could put a link.
We've got the Talking Toolkit, which is the standard itself, which is now 3. That was an interesting discussion, but we won. And also there are some services provided by some organisations that got free training course. Which is run on 45,003, and that is it'll come to me shortly. But you can obviously contact me on LinkedIn, and I'll send you the details. So that Flourish DX run a free 1-hour introduction to 45,003. And that might be useful too. I looked at it and I thought it was useful. So I think that would be good. Everyone's starting to put out resources, but you've really just got to jump in. as Haley's going to tell you, jumping in is real fun. And what this does is give structure to an unstructured area, but take the passion that we have for mental health along with you. Yeah. Because I'm too old for this. I'm 54. I'm too old. And at 67, I don't want to be having these conversations with you guys. I want mental health to be, people's mental health to be looked after and the norm. Just like you look after apples and pears and you get them a chair, I want people's mental health to be normal, to go to work healthy and not come home not healthy because of something that can be managed.
And I'm going to just address some of the questions that have come up, which is there an accreditation for businesses? And I think
there are people that are putting accreditation in, and you can have a look at it if you want, but there's no official accreditation. Although, watch this space, I guess, with ISO, they might come out with an accreditation. It's not a defined standard, so it's voluntary, but it is based on 3 years of work and experts coming together. And it was a absolute bun fight, and I'll be honest with you, to get this thing over the line, because trying to get 74 countries to agree, we did it, and we did it because at the heart of it is people's health. And I think that was what drove us through that 3 years of meetings to get there. And they don't mind me saying it's a bun fight because I share it openly.
So just, Peter, just another question, I guess, is you talked about are there certain number of principles, 7 principles? Could you mention 1 or 2 of them?
Yeah. So what it is, the standard is broken down into eight sections. So you've got the context of the organization, which is 4. So it starts at 4. Obviously you've got the scope, which is 1. So I'm going through this 10 elements to it, but these are the ones. So the context of the organization, the leadership and worker participation and what that means and how you put systems in place for that. Planning, can-do act, remember that? Can-do act, there you go. Planning, support, operation, and then performance evaluation. It is can-do act, but it's in a structured way. And it's embedded in what they call the mothership or the mother standard, which is 45,001, which is a safety standard management systems. Safety management system standard, isn't it, Haley? Haley will tell you that. And basically, this was here to address the fact that psychological health wasn't covered, because primarily safety systems look at hierarchy of control, eradication of the risk. But in mental health, there are some jobs that inherently have risk attached to it. So they have, sorry, not risk, they have hazards attached to them. How you manage the hazards is what we have pushed heavily, is primary at the organization level, tertiary, when you have a problem, let's deal with it at the individual level, and secondary. So mindfulness, resilience, and mental health first aid are tertiary interventions. They're about you and you making a difference, or you making a change. It's not about the organization. So those characteristics are primarily there, and then you have improvement. It is the management standards, standard risk assessment, 5 steps, but we call it can-do act for an international perspective.
Yeah, I think, thank you very much for that. I think it's quite insightful, and I have to agree with Peter, is that I think also one thing that I noted is that the language is much more simplified compared to other ISOs that I've had to read through before. I found it easy to follow.
It took 1.5 days to discuss the word risk.
Okay. Thank you for all your work and everything.
And to get a definition.
Yeah. With that now in mind, we're going to move into our breakout areas before we come back.